Hello and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. I'll keep it brief, no gameplay, no nothing in the background. I'll just focus on my idea on how to balance the game in a way that doesn't warp the game too much. Now, before we talk about balance overall, let's talk about how units get buffed once every 2 months. Let's talk about the fact that they only drop 2 exclusive equipments per month, which is very disappointing because they used to drop 3. Now, let's enter the exclusive equipment arguments. Now, I think exclusive equipments are fundamentally just bad. And the reason I say that is let's open Hall of Trials. Already, Hall of Trials, there is your biggest problem. The most boring mode in the game. I am not encouraged to play this thing. The only reason I have this much is because they keep making guides of Orbis or whatever that just give you free of it, free whatever this is. I don't know. They would just give you some for free. There's no way you actually play the game. I forgot where you get it, but you get it from somewhere. Anyways, my point is, let's look at some of the exclusive equipments. Now, argument number 1, these things are supposed to offer customization to your units. Let's look at Chloe. All of this is bad. Let's look at Guide Aether. Okay, maybe you can stun with S3. Okay, maybe you can give everyone attack buff. Point is, no one uses Guide Aether. Ice T-Win, all of them bad, unfortunately. Yuna, all of them bad. Now, I can see an argument with Fire Sirmia. Oh, S1 is good for PvE, and S2 can be used for PvP, except no one plays Sirmia in PvP anymore. Anyways, we can keep talking about it, but let's focus on, for example, Watcher Shuri. Name me one unit in the game with 100% evasion. None. This exclusive equipment exists for one unit in the game, and this is the issue. Although I do think the second and first are really good, I really do like having extra things in my unit, unfortunately you're always going the third one because, my bad guys, Afternoon Soak Flan just happens to be the meta. Now why is this boring? It's because you shoot your shot in the 7-second animation, you're done, and the girl is like, what? Already? And you're like, yep, 7 seconds are all I got. See you next time. That is basically what Watcher Shuri is. You just can't please anyone with this one, because it's made for one unit, and that's about it. It would be a different issue entirely if Watcher Shuri was, for example, a fire unit. So, there's a 50% chance he misses on an ice unit. And maybe that ice unit could be, could be an evasion unit. So in that case, okay, this S3 exclusive equipment is actually huge, usable in some situations. But no, it's only for one unit. Tough luck, I guess. Anyways, the next one is, unfortunately, BBK. Now, while I do think all of her exclusive equipment are good, I really think the S3 getting more damage is huge. I think the S3 getting Gab is huge. You're always going with the first one. You're just not intelligent if you do not go the first one. The first one is just so broken. I don't know what to tell you. Now, another unit we can look at is, for example, Fire Ravi. Now, Fire Ravi has funny exclusive equipments. So, if you're using Counter Set, press 1. If you're using Destruction Set, press 2. If you don't care, press 3. Now, one thing I do want to say about the third one. Okay, listen, I like this. Increased stun chance. You know the problem? It's only 10%. Listen. Her S3 is a 85% chance, okay? I am sacrificing the potential for damage on her S1 and her S3 for this stun chance. And they could not even give me 100%. I guess RNG hell. Thank you, Epic 7. I really love this. Anyways, the point of exclusive equipment is they're supposed to promise exclusivity. They're supposed to be customization. Oh, your counter. Okay, I can see why you would go the S1 exclusive equipment. Why? Because Ravi needs 90 fighting spirit to S3. You start with 60, you need one S1 in order to S3 with Fire Ravi, so I can see the use of this exclusive equipment. Now, if you're going Destruction Set, okay, maybe you want your S3 to hit harder, so, okay, I understand wanting to do more damage with the S3, but again, My point is, exclusive equipments want customization, and unfortunately they're failing to deliver because many units pick only one and they never pick something else. Like for example, I did give my examples, but I guess this will be my last example. Let's look at the recently released ones. Ahmed S3 just gives gab. You will never pick the first or the second one. Although I do think the second one is interesting, you'll always go the third one. That's just not the way I like the game. Also, one last comment about exclusive equipment before we move on. Let's look at Stray's S3. So when he kills with his S3, he gets an extra turn and buff durations. Okay, listen. Think about it. As Stray's S3 will always kill. There's never a situation where it does not kill, right? Doesn't that mean Stray's S2 has become a passive? Think about it. When you deploy a Lua, you're always using S2 into S3. When you're using a Ron, you're always using S2 into S3. Like, I just find this very boring. You know, at least when Vildred came out, when Iseria came out, some of them were interesting. I think Tenebria's was pretty broken. I like it, but yeah, anyways, the point is, doesn't this make the S2 a passive? Because you're always gonna S3, S2. You're always gonna do that. You're never gonna do something else. So just, you know, think about that. That's why I'm saying exclusive equipments promise customization, but in reality, they're just very bland, one-dimensional, blah blah blah. Now, why did I cave in on Fire Ravi? Well, Fire Ravi again wants to promise you customization. Now, another thing I do want to say, again, we're now in the middle of the pyramid. This is like big brain cope. So if you open Orbis Guide and you look at this, you go back to the very first one. This one gives me Vivian. Fair enough. Activate speed set by equipping it on Vivian. Cope with me here. Epic 7 player discovers that the game tracks your sets on a specific unit. The game knows I activated speed set on Vivian. What? Now again, you might say, hey, Forever Life has gone crazy. He's just now figuring out the game keeps statistics? No. Think about it. The game didn't said equip. It says activate. Now I understand it says equip here. Equipping it on Vivian. But no. It's saying activate speed set first. Think about it. Activate. Think about it. Okay? When you look at your unit, do you think this is the unit that gets used in PvP? Do you think when you deploy your unit in RTA, Guild War, whatever it is, do you think they take a snapshot of this and put it in the game? I don't think so, actually. Because of that achievement right there, I think otherwise. I think the unit is deployed with their base stats, then all the gear gets calculated, right? It gets added to this, your stats that are in the game. Then they add the exclusive equipment, then they add the artifact, then they add the S2 of Ravi. Now, just think of the order, right? Think of the order. First, they're putting all the stats as they can. Then they're calculating the other things. Why is this huge? Why is the order big? Because think about it. There's Moonlight Hua Young who cannot get buffed, and the increase attack by 15% does not apply to Moonlight Hua Young. Why is that huge? That means your stats on your units are buffs. So when your unit gets deployed in the battle, they get all their gear, their exclusive equipment, their artifact, whatever, and they get their sets as buffs. Now again, Epic 7 player finds out that sets add stats. But again, this is all just to say the game doesn't work as I thought it did. I thought it just takes a snapshot of your unit, your stats, and just puts it into the battle. Fair enough. But no. Again, they're just doing all this math in the background. So the game engine is aware which sets you use, is aware how the stats are calculated. It's not a snapshot. Why is this huge? Well, again, the game wants to ask for customization. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is you'll always see a 300 speed Ron. You're never going to see a 250 HP Ron with health set, for example. You're never going to see a, I don't know, some units on different sets. They always pick this one set and they just stay on it. Now, some units do get exceptions, like Ravi. She can go counter, she can go destruction. I'm not saying all units use the same sets, but I'm just saying that a overwhelming majority of units use one set and only one set. That is to say, what if we added character notes that if you use X set in PvP, you get these list of buffs. So instead of it being exclusive equipment only, you can actually, customize your units based off the sets. Now, a clear example would be Violet. Some people build them on lifesteal set. Actually, majority of them build them on lifesteal set. Rarely do you find a destruction Violet, for example. Sometimes he's built on crit set, sometimes he's penetration set. Again, it varies from player to player. Now, again, if the game really wants customization, you want to appeal to your fantasy. The whole idea of Violet, at least back in the day, was, oh, enemy picked too much ice? You want to keep dodging, you want to keep lifestealing with your Violet. Makes sense, right? Now the issue is with Epic 7, unless you're the most meta unit in the game, you rarely live your fantasy, right? Some people don't even want lifestealing with Violet, they just want them to counter with strong attacks. That's why you go Moonlight Dreamblade, for example, because you want his S1 counter to hurt. Actually, that does remind me, one thing I may have missed with Fire Ravi is, if the stats were flat, this S2, which increases attack proportional to max health, it would show in your stats right here. It would. Now, another thing is Sigurd Scythe. It already gives you attack and health. These are added here in this list for the combat power, but this increase attack by 15%, it's not added here. Why? It's because when you deploy your unit, that's when your stats are calculated. By extension, these sets on the bottom left, destruction set and health set, are added to your unit as soon as the battle starts. And again, I'm only coping like this because bystander Huayang does not get this 15% attack. Anyways, going back to Violet. So let's say, hypothetically, the game adds character notes somewhere. I don't know, somewhere here, wherever they want to add it. And they say, okay, if you take this unit to PvP, if you use lifesteal set, which again, the overwhelming majority of players use lifesteal set, this S2 could become a recovers 50% HP instead of 15%. And instead of cleansing 2 debuffs, it becomes cleanses all debuffs. Okay, fair enough. Well, what if you go speed set Violet, for example? And this evasion here, by the way, Renok theme just kills my ear. It's too loud, unfortunately. And I only have the game volume at like 3%. Anyways. Violet. So let's say if you go speed set, increases evasion by 35%, becomes plus 30. So 35 plus 30, that is 65%. With Moonlight Dreamblade, obviously you get like 85%. But again, the idea is, if you go lifesteal, your S2 is stronger. If you go speed, you get more evasion. Now, some people might say, wait a minute. Doesn't that mean I just go speed all the time? Yes and no. Some units might do that, just like exclusive equipment, where you just pick one and you roll with it. But I'm saying, with Violet, you get a choice. Okay, if you go lifesteal, we will ensure the unit is tankier. If the unit is going for speed, he does not die instantly, because guess what? We're giving him more evasion. Maybe you can give him something like, oh, if Violet goes crit set, his S3, for example, ignores damage share. Some very simple things. Or among those lines, let's look at Ice Taewon, for example. Unfortunately, a very dead unit in my eyes, but there are ways to fix him. Hypothetically, let's say if you go Unity set, a set no one uses, obviously, on T1, his S3 would grant enhanced attack buff to the backline ally, you know, the one he's protecting with his S2. I could see that working because this defense breaks, and then this grants you enhanced dual attack, and boom, you can attack a defense broken enemy. I see the vision. Or let's say hypothetically you go ER set, you know, resist set on Ice T1. You make it so that his S2 grants the backline ally 50% ER. I see that working. Or if you go defense set on him, his S2 grants 50% anti-penetration to the backline ally. Now 50% anti-pen as a passive is very huge, so you know, some people might just always go defense set on T1. But you see what I'm saying? You don't have to buff the unit directly. You just add some notes and be like, hey, if you go this set, you get this power. If you add that set, you get that other power. You know, for example, let's say if Ice T1 goes barrier set, his S2 makes him start with like a 3-turn escort. You know, you would have to sacrifice the other sets in order to live your fantasy, which is protecting your damn unit. Crazy, am I right? You have to go unity set to actually live the fantasy of attacking a defense broken unit. Now, let's look at another unit. Let's look at, for example, Green Senya. I'm not a big fan of Green Senya, but there are a few things I do like about her. For example, her S3 can be used for control. Decrease hit chance plus provoke, huge. You know, this one critical hit resistance, huge. S1 being a eternal provoke battle, huge. She also has really good exclusive equipment in my opinion. Let's go here, have a quick look. She can, you know, get HP with S1, making her tankier. More barrier on S2, but no one really uses this. And then the S3 grants Gab. Obvious, you know. You want more damage when you counterattack. Now, what is the issue with Senya's exclusive equipment? The issue with her is, let's say I want to build a tankier Senya. Unfortunately, her awakening is made only for attacking. It's not made for tanking. So if I want to use a control Senya, I'm not even allowed to do that because my stats are leaning into one thing. Another unit, for example, is Izeria. Her ratios are insane. S3 hits hard, S1 soul burn hits hard. So why is all of her awakenings, you know, just scattered? So she gets double health, some crit chance. Okay, I'm not understanding. Why are they mixing here? She gives the team attack, but she only gives herself effectiveness. See, this is my issue with Green Izeria. If I want to go full damage, I can't, because her stats, frankly speaking, lean all into effectiveness and, you know, being a support rather than just going full damage. But, you know, this could be fixed. Hey, just make 2 awakenings. One awakening goes path A, one awakening goes path B. But I think that's only for Izeria. That's only for Senya. Units that can have different uses aside of their primary use. Because let's be honest, if you gave a unit like... What's a good unit? What's a good example? If I gave a unit like Holiday Euphine 2 awakenings, right? This is her current awakening. Health, attack, health, defense, attack. So she's clearly meant to live and do some damage in the process. Imagine if I made one side of the awakening give her 130 base speed. Everyone would use the 130. Okay, maybe not 130. If I give her base speed of, let's say hypothetically, 128, everyone would use the 128. No one would use her original because that's just what she's used for. And we don't want that. But I'm just saying, for units like Izeria and for units like Senya, you know, just make 2 separate awakenings. Anyways, the whole idea is you use a set, you get a specific buff, right? Anyways, so with Green Senya, let's say hypothetically, if you go speed set on Senya, her S2 gives her 20% CR. Now you might call me crazy, but if you're building speed Senya, Maybe you're building her to control the enemy. You know, you actually want her to take turns. So actually, the S2 giving you CR would just, again, you have to sacrifice other sets in order to use speed set on Senya. You're sacrificing, I don't know, attack set. No one uses attack set. Actually, see, this is the issue. With some units, like for example, Ron, you obviously don't want to give him speed set bonus. Because if you give him a bonus with speed set, like for example, oh, makes defense break 100%, everyone already uses Ron on speed set. So obviously you don't want to give units boring sets. Because if they just stick on the most popular sets, that kind of just defies the point, doesn't it? Because again, we're aiming for customization. Anyways, going back to Senya. If you're building your Senya for raw damage, rarely do you build her on hit set, for example. Now, a common Senya build is going damage plus ER, right? So let's say hypothetically, if you build her on hit set, her S1 reduces buff durations by 1%. Now, obviously, when Senya is counterattacking, this becomes a 100% provoke. Let's say you're attacking a, I don't know, a Strays that has invincibility, right? By going hit set, this S1 has the chance to just remove that invincibility. Again, you could have picked any set, but you're picking hit set, which only buffs the S1. It does not buff anything. Now let's say ER, right? If you go ER on Senya, sorry Robin, sorry Renak, I have to skip your theme because it's too loud. Anyways, let's say if you go ER on Senya, this S2 gives ER buff for 2 turns. Doesn't sound crazy, right? Let's look at a unit like Ice Kisei, for example. I really love this unit, so let's put some thought into it. Let's say you go hit set. Again, most people either go speed or they go destruction on her. And let's look at her exclusive equipment. So S1 gives CR, S2 just does more damage, S3 decrease buff durations. S1 is used for PvE, S3 is used for PvP. That's mainly how she operates. Let's say hypothetically, if you go hit set, S3 gets a silence. Makes sense, you know, she already has a lowers buff duration and increased skill cooldown. I think with hit set, that just makes her more consistent. You know, you're using her as a anti-opener. Unfortunately, with units like Ahmed, Kisei has just been reduced to an S3, S2 bot. Very boring. You know, you just S3 with Gab and call it a day. That's it. Sorry guys, the show is over. But let's say hypothetically, if you build destruction set, this S2 for example ignores damage share. Or if you go crit set, this S1 becomes a 100% hit chance. Now again, crit set, it gives you crit chance. You don't need crit set all the time. You can just build your unit with penetration set and still reach 100% crit chance. So actually, you're losing damage by going crit set instead of penetration set or torrent set for that matter. So crit set giving Kisei S1 100% hit chance, that is huge. Actually, it doesn't even need to give 100% hit chance. It could just be like, hey, if you go crit chance, instead of increasing damage dealt by 70%, it becomes 80, 90, maybe 100%, right? Just small things like that that customizes your units. Another fun way to do it is Ilanov. She's a injury-based unit. You can make it so that, okay, if you go injury set and the enemy is, 100% injured, so they're half health, right? You can make it so that when she uses S3, penetrates 70% defense, right? You would have to specifically go injury set just to get a nuke, Yes, it becomes very more Telex-like, but again, the condition is you have to first get the injury off, and you have to be using her on injury set. Crazy, Maybe you can go defense set on Ilanov and throw back to her old S2. Her old S2 actually used to give her defense buff. So let's say if you go defense set, S2 gives you defense buff for 1 turn. Very small, I doubt it does anything. Or maybe if you go health set, her S3 has 20% lifesteal. That's a very small buff, but could be usable. Now another thing is, Elunov, in the story anyways, she has a strong desire for revenge. Sounds funny, but let's say if you build her on revenge set, you just give her S3 a very strong effect, like, okay, when attacking an enemy below 50% HP, you like push them back by 100% CR. Seems crazy, but again, you're building her revenge set, a set no one uses, instead of building her speed, instead of building her destruction, instead of building her barrier, instead of using all the others, you're going this set that no one uses. Okay, let's look at another unit like Bassar. Dead unit, unfortunately, but I really love him. And yes, this is the Bassar I used in PvP for the longest time. Not even a single Molagora in there. Anyways, now let's look at Bassar. If you go speed set, his S3 could restrict for 2 turns. But wait, every Bassar goes speed set, so it's kinda bland if they do that. Unfortunately, that's what exclusive equipments are made for, They just slap an exclusive equipment. Ludwig isn't a good example, but Watcher Shuri is for sure. So, where is it? So back then, I believe Watcher Shuri had to use an exclusive equipment to get speed. No. I forgot which unit it was. But basically, a lot of units, they use an exclusive equipment, and if they do get buffed, one of the exclusive equipments gets added to the unit. And then they just substitute the exclusive equipment with something else, right? That's the whole point. My idea is, okay, speed set would be too bland on Bassar, because let's say if speed set gave restrict over here, it would just, again, it goes back to the BBK one. Everyone will use one exclusive equipment. It goes back to Ron. It's always speed set on Ron. It's never something else. Maybe you can make it so that, if Bassar goes hit set, if he soul burns S3 for example, he pushes up all his allies by 10%. Again, you would have to build him hit set, and you would have to soul burn S3. You're adding this very small customization. Or maybe you can make it so that if Bassar goes immunity set, his S3 when soul burning grants immunity to all allies for 2 turns. Very small things like that, Or let's look at a unit like Luna. Where is she? There she is. Okay. Hypothetically, if you go revenge set, again, rare set, but works with Luna, she's a revenge based character, you can make it so that her S3 has 100% hit chance. So think about it, if you go revenge set Luna, you can snipe every afternoon soak flan in the game. Just think about it. Or for example, if you go crit set, her S2 gains 50% crit chance resistance. Why not? Or let's say if you go HP set, or defense set even, her S2 gains 50% anti-penetration. Now obviously if you make it too strong, people will always go HP set, defense set to get the anti-pen. But you see what I'm talking about. I want my Luna playing her fantasy. I want this S2 to actually resist, crits. I want my speed Senya to actually take a turn. I want my unit to do so and so. I want for example, let's look at a unit that has failed since release, buffed, but still, in my opinion, the worst unit in the game. Or at least among the worst units in the game. I can't even recognize her. It's Hawana, by the way. Is she even light? Let's look at dark. Am I going crazy? Is she a warrior? There she is. Of course she's a warrior. She's so bad I even forgot what she is. Anyways, S1 has restrict. That's lame. S3, you need... So it grants an extra turn for free. Grants speed buff and a barrier proportional to caster's attack. How sad. So she's anti-light and this is all she offers. Her S2 is free crit chance. Of course, I love my stat checking S2s, you know? I love my passives that give me stats rather than effects. Anyways, sorry Ranak. The enemy has to dual attack 3 times for me to get 75% attack. You know the sad part is? This used to be 5 times. Now, realistically, this unit is made for one mode. She was made for KDs, because this hunt, you know, they counterattack. She's a dark unit, so she's supposed to deal more damage. Unfortunately, Hawana isn't even the best unit there. You never use this unit in KDs. She's just not worth the investment. And because she's a 4-star instead of a 3-star, enhancing her uses Precious Molagora, something you do not want to do. So again, I'm just saying, for one patch, just add an extra thing here saying, oh, character notes. If you use so-and-so set, you get this so-and-so thing, you know? Just this small thing that only applies in PvP. Because, you know, you can play Arena, you can play RTA, you can play Guild Wars, you know? The whole idea is, I want...
What am I doing here so late at night?
You're so loud. Anyways, my point is, I want my character playing to the maximum of their fantasy. The sad part is, unfortunately, even against a full ice team, Violet struggles in today's day and age. That's just the reality. Unfortunately, we live in such a world where Senya has been power crapped, which is crazy to say, you know? We live in such a world where Chu against a full fire team might not even cut it anymore. We live in such a world where... What is it? Well, let's look at the unit. We live in such a world where one tank... Oh, you happen to do damage? She just uses this and just one-shots your entire team? Nothing you can do about it. Am I complaining about Dragon Bright Senya? A little bit. I really dislike this unit, although she is getting power crapped, finally. She's still a bad contender. We have Navy Captain Londi. I remember when she released, most broken unit in the game. I remember when Moonlight Luna released, most broken unit in the game. Sea Phantom Politis, still broken just by virtue of having 120 speed. Again, really broken unit. These units don't deserve to have character notes. These units don't deserve to have exclusive equipment. So, leave them as they are. All I'm saying is, just look at the forgotten, unusable characters. Give them a small note. Hey, if you want to use a specific set, if you want to play your character to their fantasy, do this. Boom. Let's look at Kayron, for example. These stats do not serve him whatsoever. Let's be honest, when you're playing counter set, you don't want 129 speed on your Kayron. Rarely anyone uses him on his silence exclusive equipment in the first place. And honestly, this S2 never procs twice in one battle. So, you know, go 2 awakening routes. What is even his S3 awakening? Grants attack buff. Crazy. Wow. Anyways, just give him 2 awakenings. 1 awakening if you want to play him as he is, you know? Because I'm an advocate of having 2 awakenings. You could be like, okay, this first awakening stays as it is. The second awakening, you know, maybe shaves off 15 speed and gives him like more crit chance, more attack, or maybe even just more effect resistance. Anything but speed, because when you're countering, or when you're playing counter Kayron, you want him actually countering. You don't want him taking too many turns, because if he laps, well, you might lose out on the immortality. You might not be able to S3 something. You want the enemy to attack him in order for him to counterattack. I think I've over-explained my point, but I'm just explaining so much because I want my point to be clear. We started with this very pyramid scheme-like thing, where we talked about Hall of Trials, again, Hall of Trials issues start the moment I mention Hall of Trials. Very bad mode and exclusive equipment, although this promises customization. You're only picking one, you're never picking another one. Unfortunately, that's just the situation. And then we talked about unit stats, on how they work. The game applies all your stats as buffs. You know? This, it's a buff. This, it's a buff. All these units, you know? Especially with Fire Ravi. If her stats were given to her as a snapshot, you know? If your stats were deployed like this, where you enter the battle, everything is taken a snapshot of, you would see how much stats this S2 gives. You would see this increases attack by 15% in your base stats. You would not have to literally do math by yourself independently to figure out what your stats are. I hope I've made my point clear. Epic 7, I'm not asking for huge buffs. I'm not asking you, hey, change how a unit works. All I'm saying is, if I want to play a specific fantasy, you know, I want my Ravi, actually, Ravi is fine as she is, but, you know, if I want my Ice 2, and for example, protecting a unit with his S2, give me the option, you know, oh, defense set gives anti-pen, barrier set gives escort, ER gives 50% ER to the backline, or, you know, unity set, S3 gives enhanced dual attack, you know, because I want to make use of this defense break. Just very, very small things. I'm not asking for more. And again, when adding these character notes, which again take them 2 seconds because they're only writing text, they're not even making an exclusive equipment anymore. You know, no need for that fancy art, that fancy language where, oh my god, is he using Styria? A beautiful silver sword that cuts through its enemies delicately like the winter wind? No, they don't have to write stuff like this. They don't have to make art. Just text. That's all I'm asking for. Text. Man. Anyways, I've over-explained. This video went on way longer than I expected. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.